Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the One Pixel Out podcast. It's episode 3. We've had a little break over the summer holidays, and we're back. If you are an existing listener or watcher of the podcast, welcome back. And if you are new and you have only just recently found us, then welcome. We are a bunch of ex-colleagues based in the north of England that talk about digital product design and all the lovely and bad things that come with that. That's a general synopsis of the podcast. We don't do edits here. It's basically like a recorded live stream. That's probably just best way of thinking about it. Don't have as long as normal today, but we'll see how we get on, because obviously once we get talking, sometimes there is no stopping us. Let's kick off. So a little exercise that we tend to do at the beginning of the podcast. Oh, actually, before I do that, does anybody want to say hello? Because we've got Mikey, we've got Steve, we've got Dave.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Oh.
Of course, I'm James. So that's the intros. If you do want to know more about us, actually, go back to episode 1 where we do a little bit more of a deep dive, professional, formal kind of explanation of who we are and what our experiences are, if you want to listen to that. If not, let's just crack on. We've not discussed the kickoff question today because I tend to keep it secret from the guys to kind of put them on the spot. And we were having a bit of a preamble, so this one should raise a few laughs, hopefully. I'll throw this one to you, Steve. Favorite movie featuring George Clooney?
Yeah. It's that one, the Papa John's one. You remember the? Is that? Oh, that's not his film, is it?
That's the screenplay that we're writing for him. And we're propose.
Oh yeah, big George Clooney fan. I do like the ocean films. I really like. It's just feel good. It's a feel good film. I don't know if you chaps have seen it before, but yeah, I love the oceans films, and yeah, I think he does a stellar job of that. He's a great director as well. He's a really good director. I know I was trying to sell this to you all beforehand while you're sort of frantically googling what movies he's been in, but yeah, he can do a bit of both, which is fantastic. What about you, Dave? What are you thinking, mate?
I'm going to say the ocean films, and that coffee advert that he's in, fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah,
He's the best. He's the best in that.
He's so good, isn't he? Yeah.
The way he drinks is so natural.
James, what about you? You asked the question. You must be a big fan.
I am actually. I did go through a bit of a George Clooney phase at one stage. I'm going to say 2 films I like with George Clooney, both quite different. One is from way back in the day called Up in the Air. And it's really nicely shot, all the normal sort of cinema stuff, but I like him in that. And if you don't know about it, look it up on the internet, try and find it. It's a good film to watch. And the other one is perhaps not one of his big blockbuster type of films, but it's like a crime action film called The American. And he's like an assassin hiding out in like this Italian village. And that I found interesting. It's quite slow, but yeah, that was good. So those 2 would be my George Clooney recommendations if you've not seen those ones.
James, can I change my choice?
No.
Yeah, you're stuck on coffee now. One of you is watching coffee.
Dust Till Dawn just popped in my head. That is
that was going to be my pick.
That's a great film.
That was my pick. Dust Till Dawn. Yeah, Dust Till Dawn's brilliant. Tarantino is obviously interesting in that, but like you know the guy with the gun.
Oh yeah.
He did.
I think he's called Sex. You can say that. Yeah.
He's the makeup guy who does Dawn of the Dead. I did in that too. Yeah, he's a really famous like makeup guy. Probably. I'll be told I'm wrong now, but I'm pretty sure he is. I shouldn't have come out with facts, should I? Damn it. We'll leave it there. Cut.
I'm still impressed from your Spice Girls knowledge in the last one.
Yeah.
I was about to say, Dave, I think Mike is probably upset that he didn't have a cameo in Spice World.
Or did I?
Yeah. Who knows? Right. So let's go on to this week's topic. Dave, do you want to kick us off, and then we can go from there?
Yeah, let's do it. Hi, everyone. So this week, really interesting topic. So we're going to talk a little bit about our introduction into design leadership roles and those that involve line management as well. We've all had very different experiences, I think it's fair to say. We've had people who's tried line management, then gone back into being more of a practitioner, We've had people that have tried line management and then continued through that route. So yeah, I think it's going to be a really good topic. I think thinking about my introduction into line management, and it aligns very much with Steve's as well. So we joined a Sky Betting and Gaming at sort of a similar time. I think we were the last two in as well. So it was at the time, James, you hired us, and it was very much a senior team. So like when you bring people in, it would be looking for senior designers. And I think myself and Steve were the last two in. And I think we've been there a couple of years. And there was no route above a senior designer at that time. So you went from product design, you went to senior designer, and then I think the only role above was like a head of design role. And there was, at that time, I think there was a head of research role as well. So I think, James, you also kind of oversaw the research team at the time. And that got to a stage where the business realised that it's got a lot of seniors in the team, and it might be time to open up progression opportunities. So there was a couple of lead designer roles opened up. Myself and Steve were successful in getting those roles. And I think some of the challenges that came with that was, at that time, the head of design was on the way out. So the person that hired us was leaving shortly after, which didn't help. There was no design leadership in place at that time as well. So like myself and Steve were going into lead roles, and those lead roles involved line management. We were also going to be inheriting, as part of our direct reports, people that had also gone for the same role, so interviewed at the same time. And the reason I talked about being last in, because you'd had people who'd been there like up to 10 years. And then myself and Steve were now becoming their line managers as well. I think at that time we had massive support, like from above, with regards to the product director, who did give us that space where we knew that we were going into a place where there's potentially not design leadership and there's not a head of design going to be there, but we had a safe space where we could learn quickly, we could fail quickly, and he was very supportive at the time as well. And I guess I'll throw it now to Steve and see what he thought about his sort of experience, because we can go more deep into it, but I think they were very different with regards to Steve stepping into the role as a lead designer there, and then myself stepping in. What we found challenging, what Steve enjoyed, what I enjoyed, and kind of where we've ended up now.
Yeah, mate. I think it's a really good overview of our experience at SVG, and yeah, I concur with everything you've said there. One thing maybe to as a minor build is we got our roles, I think, in the October-November time, and then the following March, COVID hit. So we were stepping into leadership while the company went through massive organizational changes. And then for a time, we were essentially, as you've mentioned, Dave, we were acting without a direct manager. And again, as you've mentioned, the product director was incredible on many different levels. It just meant we were wearing multiple hats, weren't we, Dave? So like hands-on design, because we still had an active role in certain projects. We were team leads, and we were managing a core group of designers whilst hiring, and at times almost functioning as heads of design for certain conversations. So it was a real baptism of fire. And yeah, Dave alluded to, like, on top of that, we weren't the only two going for these roles. There were a few other folks that had gone for these particular roles. So they were understandably unhappy and wanted to leave the business. So navigating that while still finding our own feet meant working hard to keep morale and trust intact. It became a really tricky environment at times. So yeah, and I was also managing my best friend, which brought its own challenges. And, in terms of keeping boundaries while supporting them and trying to maintain a good, a good friendship and what have you. So yeah, really interesting period, I think, of our lives. I think one-to-ones for me quickly became a lifeline, so helping us understand what each person needed and how we could support them. So sometimes that meant giving people more ownership, or giving clarity on direction. And other times it meant just creating space to listen. So those conversations really helped us keep those people engaged, and they also laid the groundwork for rebuilding trust and moving forward as a group together. And I think, Dave, I don't know if you agree with me on this, but synergy is the one word that kind of pops into my head. We'd have our weekly we'd have many touch points throughout the week, but we'd have a wash up on a Friday. I think that kept us sane and afloat, throughout COVID period. We leaned heavily on each other, combining our strengths to keep things moving, and that for me was a survival mechanism in terms of us learning how to be managers in the space, learning how to adapt in a hybrid environment or a remote environment to start with, bringing a design team back on board, going through like choppy waters, and trying to progress forward, and as I said, we had brilliant support around us, but it was the first few months were really interesting. I've got go for it, Dave. Go on.
Something there, Steve, quickly. A couple of things that you said there, which I was thinking about as well. Like, you talked about managing your best friend, and I remember at the time when we were thinking about how we split up the team, working with the product director, thinking about who manages who. Do you look back and think that was a mistake as part of that journey for yourself? Was that really difficult?
Yeah, I do, because I think it creates complexity, especially when you're trying to find your feet yourself as a manager, going through the gears. We're still the best of friends now, so that's all good. We're fine. We're like, he's my best buddy, and he always will be. But I think that situation would have been a lot easier have it been the circumstances in terms of who was task managing that person were slightly different to start with. So yeah, I think we made work for ourselves in that situation, which is a really good reflection. I think it's something to be mindful of when taking on those types of roles, and you've got the autonomy and the space to select your teams and organize and orchestrate how you want to.
I found some of the one-to-ones at the very start quite challenging, because it's the first time we've probably spoken to the people like our reports who'd also gone for the same roles. I found that quite challenging because we've basically got to get the team motivated again. We're probably accepting that we know some people are going to leave off the back of it, but they're not all going to leave, and they're definitely not all going to leave right away. So you've then got to motivate a team. You've got to sort of work on a strategy with regards to, yes, this is a direction we're going, this is the right thing to do, and then we've got to convince the team to come along with us. And I found that quite challenging, especially without that head of design role in place, that we were kind of learning on the job a little bit. And again, with liaise with the product director, but I think it's fair to say his style was also like, let them fail a little bit, figure it out themselves, and that's how they'll develop, which was really good at the time as well.
Definitely.
I always feel like even when we're seniors, and that's for all the team, like we're always in like the sort of strategy. It's quite a small team at the time compared to what I've seen elsewhere, and like we were always welcoming sort of like the meetings to setting the strategy. We knew what was going on with the product. We knew sort of where we were trying to head. So it wasn't when we're taking these roles that, we're now going to get in certain meetings and stuff, we're now going to get more, because we kind of had that anyway. It was much more like, now you're overseeing the team, you're setting the team direction, but also you're still going to be doing design work as well. So lots of challenges there.
Just a final one, sorry, not to hog the mic, Mikey and James on this, but the element of being a hands-on designer as well, I thought was really interesting. And I think making that shift from being hands-on to leading, I think was quite an eye-opener. Knowing that we had to do all three anyway, but when you're so involved in the detail, and then the following day or the following week, there's a different set of expectations in terms of redefining what good work looks like. So I think that was quite a big learning, letting go the idea that success was about producing the best designs yourself. Instead, it became creating the space and clarity for others to thrive. So that was a big shift, but it was a defining one as well. And I think as an individual contributor, you can think of success measured by the quality of your own work. And then as a leader, what I learned anyway is about setting the conditions for others to, do their best role, do their best jobs, and that meant leaning more into creative direction, shaping the, you know, a vision or guiding the craft at the right altitude. But yeah, I think the thing that really stood out to me immediately when I first took that job was about scaling through people rather than just, you know, trying to do everything yourself, and accepting that you'll naturally be further away from the detail. Yeah, and I think that was an interesting shift, I think, for the both of us, knowing that we were very much hands-on to start with, and you know, because you love design, don't you? You've got that passion for design. That's why you do it. But yeah, it's an interesting one.
Yeah. I'll question for you, James. So, like, when we spoke about there was no design leadership team at the time when we were going into. The head of design was leaving, and then since then, I'm used to being in sort of teams where there is a design leadership community, and that's where you can do some of your best work and you can set the team strategy. I remember when you hired us, there was potentially just yourself who was overseeing quite a lot. So there was no sort of hierarchy with regards to above senior. So it was yourself. And then you had like the design team and then potentially overseeing the research team as well. How did you find that?
Good question. I mean, just to reflect on what you guys have just been talking about there, interestingly, you both kind of went through that experience at the same time, right? So you've both gone from being seniors or individual contributors to them both becoming line managers at the same time, which I would guess in most people's situations or circumstances, depending on the size of the business, probably doesn't happen that often. But sounds like you guys kind of lent on each other to help navigate not only that transition into what do I do becoming a manager, but also how do I deal with everything else that's externally going on in the world around COVID and how we actually work as a team. So yeah, hats off to you both that you're both still alive and smiling to tell the tale. But yeah, I guess maybe from my perspective, to answer your question, Dave, that had probably been quite a gradual process for me. So I remember the team being very, very small to start with, and that was when I was probably lead designer, and I just had 2 direct reports. I think Mikey was my third when I brought Mikey into the business, and then that team just kind of grew bigger and bigger. We had different heads of design that came in and then brought in like the research team. But then when they moved out, I moved into that role. And yeah, so I think by the end, there might have been 11 or 13, not direct reports, but people within that design team. And that was probably the biggest that product design team had been at that moment in time. If I was to kind of call out some of the things that I found challenging, what you both mentioned there is that transition of when you're part of a design team and you're all mates and you all go out at lunchtime and you all, you know, badmouth everything that's going on in the business and slag everything off, and then all of a sudden you become the boss of those people. It is an interesting transition. I don't really know if many people talk about that a lot and how that dynamic plays out, because it is a strange one. Normally you're in a situation maybe within a team where you realize that certain senior people in the business might not come out to like social events and things like that, and there's a reason they probably stay away, because maybe people don't feel like they can have fun around the boss, etc. And then you realize, oh, I'm the boss. That means do I just like go out and do the normal stuff, or do I just kind of like realize that dynamic somehow, just by having a name or the fact that you're their direct reports, means that you have to behave differently? I don't think I really resolved that or fixed that specifically. But yeah, I think it's that transition to understanding, okay, what I struggled with was when I was an individual contributor, whether that was a senior designer, to a certain extent, a bit like a lead, like what you guys were, where you were still kind of managing a team, but also hands-on. That instant gratification of being a designer and working on stuff on your screen and seeing something at the end of the day, that kind of seemed for me to disappear a little bit when you moved into those more senior management roles, and it became much more about meetings and one-to-ones and looking after your team. And I think that one of the things that I struggled with was understanding that those timelines of having that gratification about the effort that you're putting in are so much stretched further apart. So you can see maybe how people develop and grow, and that gives you great satisfaction. But it's such a slow burn, and it took a while for me to adapt to that and realize that that was the case. And I think one of the things that helped with me was, and I can't remember who spoke to me about this, whether it was someone in the design community or whether I read it online, but I think it was a mental shift of thinking, okay, I'm not designing a product or an app anymore. I'm designing a team. It's still designing, and you can still look at what the problems are that you want to solve, and you can still think about the users that you're designing for, but it's people and it's within the structure of a business. And I think that helped also for me to frame that kind of stuff and make that transition away from something which, I'll be honest, I wrote down ahead of this. It's like, a lot of the times people's leadership skills are probably going to be based around the bosses or leaders that they've had and that they've witnessed. And you probably see some of the bad stuff and think, well, I will never do that. And then you might see some of the good stuff and say, oh, I hope that I can be like that. But the reality is you're always going to be shaped by those experiences, whether you've had good ones or bad ones, and it will shape how you maybe initially take those first steps into that type of leadership role. So that would be my
very quickly jump in there, James, when you were saying that. So I remember when you hired me, and I learned a lot from you, so credit to you for this, but with regards to getting to know the person as well, I've never had that before, where I would work in a team and you'd just be there, here's your task, get it done, off you go home. You actually got to know the team. You learned about me. I remember you got me a Christmas gift, and it was like on conspiracy theories and stuff, and like it was very unique to me because you know that I would talk about conspiracy theories, and then somebody else got a different gift and stuff. So you got to know us, and you understood like what we liked, and you'd ask questions about outside of work as well, like one-to-one time as well. It'd be dedicated where we wouldn't have to talk about work. And I learned a lot from that time with regards to things that I think when I become a manager, these are some of the things that I would want to do, because I remember it gave me a really positive feeling about working there. And then it's just experience that I hadn't had before. And I was like, this is new. And yeah, I thought it was really good.
I'd echo that, Dave. And I think we're going to give James a glow up here, but like like for me, the real standout was that and your high level of emotional intelligence, the way you tuned into people. You didn't just manage the work. You looked at the person behind it as well, and you created an environment where it was safe to fail fast and learn. And I've definitely taken that on. And there are things that me and Dave did when we were in our roles, like Dave thinking about like the superhero cards or the driver's exercise, where we're really trying to get to know the person and build that team culture off the back of it. So yeah, they really did rub off on me. And I think one thing I'd be like interested in from your perspective, James, I'll bring you in, Mikey, as well, is
just I
was waiting for Mikey to tell somebody about how bad
levels, just like.
Well, I'm just waiting for everyone to stop
just
trying to hate James.
Just energy levels on that, James, in terms of personal life and work life and how you split the two, and like whether or not that was something that came naturally or you had to learn over time, that type of thing. But we could pick that up on a bit later. It'd be good to bring Mikey in now.
Oh, well, let's review James. And like my journey into leadership is completely different to yours, because I left Sky there and I get almost like a sideways roll back into government, same level, and then within there I'd stayed there for a couple of years, gone up to lead, and then another job came in a consultancy, and I took that, and that was like a head of design role. And that grew. It was one of those roles where, probably similar to what James provided you guys, what Skybet provided to you guys, was the breathing space. They let me, basically, here's a set of keys, you go start the car, but we'll teach you how to drive it slowly but surely. And it was very eye-opening, like, because I felt like the ramp was straight up for me. I'd gone straight from talking about a thought on new leadership And we do talk about leadership, but let's not forget that's management as well. And it's the management bit, which is it all. I'd done management before, but I mean, I'd not managed a team of designers, and I joined and there was 12. And within a year it was 42. So I'd gone through a heck of a journey there, and it was like James. Yeah, you learn a lot from James. It's the culture that you took. That I can remember speaking to you, James, quite a lot about how to manage people. You probably didn't even realize this, but I can remember I can remember you doing the culture, and the culture at Skybet was spot on. It is literally the best place I've worked. And I wanted to bring that to the consultancy that I worked at. And it was key that I wanted my personality, and that culture, because I do think design can be quite bitchy sometimes, and it can be quite, I probably like you guys, I got a job that other people wanted. Yeah. I got the role, even though they interviewed me. I got the role, and it was very interesting when I went in, and I just remember thinking, almost like, what would James do here, or what would other? I did have other good managers, but James, you were my last one. Yeah, it's just an interesting learning curve, and do you know what I found? The struggles I had weren't. It was. When I always imagine this, right, for a football manager, when they first go into the team and that first meeting, that first community day, that first thing, they were just like, here you go to the front, and I'm like, I've not done this before. I've not done this big talk, and I was so quiet. And I look back now, and I was like, oh God, I was really awkward and really quiet. And I didn't, and for me, it's quite, I mean, not this podcast, but usually I'm quite talky. And I found it really hard. I was really nervous on what to say, because a lot in my career, I've joined a team and the head's always been there. So they're already rolling. So I'd not seen the first day. So I didn't know what to say. And I can just remember feeling so awkward. And then I don't know whether you guys had this, but I started to suffer from imposter syndrome very quickly, because I was managing, probably similar to what you're saying, James, in and around. I was managing designers, and suddenly I'm not a designer anymore. I'm a manager. I was hands-off design, and I was suddenly like, fuck, I don't know what I'm doing here. So I found that really tricky, really, really tricky, to the point of I was almost avoiding stuff. And then, yeah, and I probably let it slip for quite a while, those tricky conversations, I almost want to call them dangerous conversations, because I left it so long. And then obviously I had a ramp up. I just had a list of, oh God, I'm going to have to do feedback talks. And as soon as I did one, I was like, hold on, this is quite addictive. Telling someone their crap. No, but I really enjoyed it, because then I saw the person going, well, let's fix it. And I was just like, oh God, they took it completely the opposite way. You start to imagine the worst case scenario. So I got a massive high from that. And I now I've gone back to more IC/strategic roles. I do miss line management from permanent roles. I really miss it, especially the it's not the seniors that I don't mind managing. They're fine most of the time. I really want the entry level ones, the academy kids or adults and stuff like that. I still mentor loads now, and I've really enjoyed that. But it's really, they kind of, get your engine going, don't they, a little bit, because they're so young, they're so eager, or so young in their journey, and it's nice to be there, and it's nice to be asked as well. Because I do design now, but I wouldn't say I love it or anything. It's just I just do it as it's just normal now. Like mechanics fix cars. Don't know whether they love it or not, but they do it. But yeah, yeah. Do you know what? I think I'd be interested to see, like, you guys, especially David and Steve. You spoke about leadership the whole way through that, but you never mentioned management. And I think that's one of the hardest bits of leadership. It's a bit like, I don't know, doing a design system, right? You can do the components and the patterns really easy, but it's getting people to follow you. Yeah. And I know that could be leadership, but sometimes you've just got to go, this is it. This is what we're doing. And I had loads of conversations like that. And I wondered whether in your roles, have you faced the bit where you haven't had people go, I don't agree? Because I had that, and I was just like, oh shit, what do you do here? Because I've not done that. If James said, just go run into a wall, I'd be like, oh, I'm sure he knows what he's talking about. But you'd heard that, James, I guess, hadn't you? Like respect. But yeah, just wondering whether that, because that was when someone said no to me, I was just like, well, I've got nothing. Okay. You're fired.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever had to deal with that, to be honest. But like you said, Mikey, I think potentially that might be something more if you've recently stepped into the role, and especially a bit like what Dave and Steve were speaking to before. If there's people that are still on your team that went for that role and didn't get it, they could be a little bit, salty about it potentially. But no, it's something that people new into a role might experience, because they might get a little bit of pushback. I don't know if Steve, David, you experienced that before, and like how you dealt with it or not.
I definitely think we experienced a bit of that, Dave, didn't we? Go through, especially that initial period, and yeah, I think a big part of that was almost like redefining what good looked like, and potentially what what success looked like in that period. So like for me, I mentioned re-establishing that element of trust and building that back up from the ground up. And there was a reluctance in certain situations, but for me anyway, I tried to put myself in their shoes and better understand what they would want out of the role while they were with us in the organization, and how we can kind of help them towards whatever short and medium term goals that they that we can kind of build towards. So I think for me, it's like really just trying to break down the walls a bit. Hopefully that doesn't sound too cliche, but just to try to reconnect with them at a ground level, and almost humanize the experience again. It was a really tricky period, but I think they were the core things for me, was just re-establishing a connection, and building those elements of trust again, knowing that we weren't going to have all the answers, but we will give as much clarity as possible in a world which was very ambiguous. We had COVID sprinkled on top of that as well, but they were the big things for me. It was trust, as much clarity as we could provide, and just trying to be there, trying to listen in quite a difficult situation. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that, Dave.
No, it's very much similar. I think at that time we kind of accepted, we knew that morale was going to be low, definitely with some people. We knew that people were probably going to leave. I don't think I've ever had, and I don't think at that time we had anyone say no to anything. But like Steve said, at that moment in time, it was just about spending time with them. There was no like asking them to do tasks and stuff. It was more like, right, let's just get back to some of the fundamentals. Let's spend time with each other. Let's like build a bit of trust again with the group, some team building exercises. And then it was very much just understanding the position that they were in, understanding the position we were in, and then having like adult conversations around like, how are you feeling about it? Obviously, I tackled it like that with regards to, I know we're both come for the same role, and like, let's have an open conversation about how you're feeling, whether you feel like it's deserving that two of us have got that role over other people and stuff. I just felt that was the best way, because then you've got all the sort of negativity out of your system in those one-to-one conversations, and you can try to move forward, and you can start to see, yes, okay, what sort of, how is this person going to be over the coming weeks, over the coming months? Is it going to turn into like, is this person going to leave, or is it going to turn into like a long-term low morale? And then how are you going to work around that? Is it going to be like put later down the line performance managing? So all these things kind of go through your head. But I think that we had a really good group, an understanding group, that we knew that some people were going to leave. We didn't have anybody like saying no. We didn't have anyone really down in tools. It was a really difficult time, but it was a really, really good time for our development.
It was bringing them back on board. Yeah, well said, Dave, and kind of building their confidence again. I'd say there was a bit of that, wasn't there? Knowing that their confidence had taken a bit of a hit, knowing that we'd gone for similar roles in that respect. And yeah, I think that initial period was tough, but as mentioned, I think me and Dave really lent on each other there. So we put a lot of thought into those conversations in terms of how we'd frame them, and some of the things that we try to, like some outcomes we try to aim for off the back of it. So we didn't go into them willy-nilly just thinking, I'm sure this will be fine. They were very, very much thought out conversations that we tried to manage expectations as best we could, I think.
Oh, quick one now that I just thought about when you were saying that. It's something that I do with my team now as well is having sort of those honest conversations around, like, if people are thinking of leaving, it's absolutely fine. Like, we don't want people in a team, or you don't want people in a business who don't want to be there. So, like, at that time, like, I'll help you with your CV, I'll review your portfolio. Like, let's those open conversations. It doesn't need to be a secret if you're thinking about leaving the team. Like, if this team's not right for you and you're really struggling and there's nothing we can do with regards to, there's no more progression opportunities, like, we can focus on your development, we can get you ready for that role. If that role's not going to open up here, more than happy to review portfolios, help you with interview practice and stuff like that, and find the right role for you. And again, I think that's part of being a good manager with regards to what's best for your team.
Just maybe think something, Dave. Oh, sorry, go on, Mikey. You go first.
I was going to say, I think your situation might have been a lot different to mine as well, because when I joined, there wasn't a community in the area of design I was in. So there wasn't. So it was being led by. They were doing gatherings, but they were gathering like in the end it was a big team, right? But they were gathering like a bit over there, a bit over here, and a bit. It was all over the shop, and it was quite cliquey, and it's quite niche what they were gathering about. Some people wanted to do like the thinky design. Some people wanted to be the visual designers, and some people just wanted to work in private sector kind of design. And it was all over the shop, and I had to. It was very calculated. What I had to do in the end was to take it off them, but do it in a way that I don't take anything off them. I just give it more structure. But that was a new thing for me, because it changes your language completely. Because you're not you're kind of talking down, but wanting to talk sideways at the same time. And I found that really tricky, was the handling the language of, take a breath, ask them what their reaction to it was. And I can remember that being very interesting conversations around, we can't be having 3 communities for one design. It just doesn't make any sense at all. So I can remember that being quite tricky. But yeah, I guess tip wise, I actually just ended up them doing it, and that was the greatest gift I could have given them, because I gave them permission to fuck up, basically. Sort out a community day if you want. I'm gonna have to do some spiel around it, but then you do it. But you need to come to me to say, this is it. And I guess it teaches them strategically, what the hell is this Tuesday going to be? If it's going to be not 24 hours, but if it's going to be an 8-hour, we're not working day, we can't charge for a day, then it needs to be strategic. But yeah, it was it was interesting. I learned loads, like you learn resilience straight away. You learn how to speak to people of all levels, all issues, all situations, and all of that stuff. But just, God, you learn how to listen, don't you?
Big time. Yeah.
I can remember, James, sorry to bring you in. I can remember you once asked me, when you, and I don't know why I remember this, but I always remember it, is you once asked me when I line manage, because I think we might have met afterwards. We were at Sky Bear. I can't remember. You asked me, when you're line managing, where do you put all the stuff? All the data, all the information. I was like, what's he talking about? And then when I line managed, and I had so many directs, and people were coming to me because their line managers were just not great. I was just like, oh crap, this is what he's talking about. Because people do have real problems, right? That you don't know when you're just their colleagues, but when you're their line manager, you're like, holy moly, people have worlds that you couldn't even imagine. And I was like, I can remember that being, all I'm coming up with problems is here, but like I can remember, James. I was like, bloody hell, James, you're not lying. Like, where do you put it? And that was really tricky as well, because you're like, what do you do with this? Because you can't tell anyone apart from obviously. But I was like, oh, people have stuff going on. Another thing that no one really talks about, is in like that management of, that you manage people's emotions, but you have to almost like bend the rules to make it work for someone and not the others. And that was a wider thing that, yes, I was managing people in the lead role, but as soon as you go up another level, you're like, I don't know, you feel like you're in charge of everything, and you're in control of too much, I guess. And I guess, James, that must have been tough for you, because even when it was low numbers, like the 3 to then it grows, it must have been hectic, because if you don't know the answer, I found that quite tricky. And yeah, because I can remember coming to you, James, for some stuff, and you must have been like, You pop up.
Um,
Well, you come. It's because you come to someone with a problem like James.
Yeah.
I want I want to go up at a level, and you know there is no there is no other level. You know, it's those kind of chats, and I just was like, I took so much off you there, James. You know, like as in like, well, we'll talk about development. You know, and this is what you need. Because I can remember you were teaching me how to become ahead of, and I just remember that, and it was like that kind of stuff. And I was just like, I look back now, and I'm like, you don't realize, do you? But you look back now, and I'm like, oh God, I took so much from that to now.
Yeah, I think it's a bit like what Dave touched on before. Like if you've got somebody that wants to progress within your team and there isn't the budget for that to happen, or actually the structure just isn't there for that to happen, then you have to be responsible enough to talk to them about what they're looking for. And even if it isn't within the current business, the best thing you can do is try to set them up for success somewhere else and accept that you might lose somebody that's really good, but you wouldn't see it as something to be angry about or negative towards, because you would be seeing, well, yeah, that's kind of what your job is as a manager or as a leader, is to make people better and to see them go and succeed. But yeah, just to quickly touch on the other point is, if you are a designer, it's possible that you have got a certain amount of empathy towards people and situations and emotional intelligence. And designers tend to like to moan a lot. So it can be something which it does need to be managed in some shape or form. And whether that's, you have a therapist or you have a partner that you can offload to, or best friends, or a really good HR people team or something like that. You can't do it all on your own. And that probably would lead us onto a separate conversation around burnout, which is probably another episode completely, but definitely one we should touch on. What I was writing down earlier was, it's really interesting how all four of us have got very different kind of entrances or beginnings in that managerial sort of leadership role. And I thought, okay, if there's somebody listening to this podcast right now, and let's not cover the whole element of like, should they move into management or not? Let's say that they've already, accepted a role, or that they know that that's what they want to do. Because there are such things as like the manager trap, where sometimes people move up a level because they think that it's the right thing to do, but ultimately they miss being a designer and they end up being, not as happy as what they were previously. So putting that to one side, because that again might be another episode. I guess if you were to say one or two bits of advice to somebody that's going to be becoming a design manager for the first time, or starting that leadership journey, what are the things that you would probably point them towards and say, this is what you should be thinking about and considering when you start that job? And apologies for putting you on the spot there, but maybe it just helps people have a nice little takeaway at the end of this session as we come to the end of time. And I'll leave it open to anyone that might have something to chuck in straight away.
Bingo. I do this quite a lot with the mentoring, when people ask around going into sort of line management roles, or more of like principal roles where you're not doing line management but you're still hands-on. I'd say these roles, like design leadership with line management, is very tough. You don't have, and again, this can depend on the type of role, type of company that you're going into, but you don't tend to have the work-life balance that you would have if you was just still being sort of a specialist, if you're still being sort of a principal. They're extremely difficult. I would encourage anyone to starting out to try and go into a small team, so rather than going into a large team. But I think what it comes down to is, if you're going to be successful, is what's above you with regards to the culture, the business. Like, what support have you got in place? I've had roles where I felt that when myself and Steve talked about going into these roles, we had the support of the product director. We could fail fast, and we could learn. That was a very safe space. I've had roles where that's not been there, and I felt I couldn't do my job at times because the sort of foundations I was trying to set as a design leader were being taken away. So really do research on the type of companies that you'd want to work for. Like, what's it like to work there? What support are you going to have? because like if it's your first role, you need to be set up for success as well, right? So those are some of the things that I'd say, and I'll hand across to Steve. Do you want to go next?
Yeah, definitely. There's some brilliant points, Dave. And I think as elements that we've discussed throughout the pod, so redefining success, that your job isn't to be the best craft person anymore. It's, as mentioned, creating the conditions for others to thrive and do their best work. And I think understanding that shift is really important. I think your teams will look for you for direction and stability as well. So being clear about what success looks like and protecting them from, I think you'll all know this, the noise, in terms of, so they can focus, and giving them a degree of protection there. Even when you don't have all the answers, just having an essence of calmness and clarity are really powerful tools. And I think the final one for me is around investing in people. And again, I know we spoke about this, but those one-to-ones are really meaningful, and you can tailor your style to each individual, and each small action, is compounded into what culture you create. So I think that's really important, investing in the people that you work with, getting to know who they are, protecting your team and clarifying what direction you're moving forward in, and then thinking about yourself as well in terms of what does success look like. I think there'll be tools that will enable you to progress well as a manager. Over to you, Mikey.
I think you all touched on this, but I think it's realizing that you don't do outputs anymore. You control the outputs, but you control it from a different angle. So you influence the outputs instead of doing the outputs. And I think that was the biggest thing for me, was realizing that not everyone's at the same level as I am, and it's getting them to that level, which is, once you, I don't want to say master it, but once you get used to doing that with people and growing them and taking them along the journey, it's amazing. And I find that's a new high, rather than delivering a design. I think the second one I would do is something I touched on earlier, was the quiet leadership, where you let the room speak, let them all, and you find out all the problems, and you're working behind the scenes with the management, with whoever's above, and fixing. It might, and this bit, it took me about 6 months to get the gaps, to get the opportunity to do what the team wanted. But it's me doing those meetings, sitting at those tables, and ensuring that there is a design team, there is development and things like that. And I think it's getting used to not having instant results, I guess, is what I'm saying. And that's at both points, is because when you design, you get instant gratification, and you're a lead singer, and as soon as you go into that leadership role, you're way back. You're just a groupie at this point. Without maybe I should have chosen someone else. Band manager, yeah. And you're just kind of like, you're not on posters anymore, really. You're just in the background. And I think that was an interesting curve for me, was realizing that other people shine, and you're just, and the high is them shining. I guess it sounds corny as hell, but do you know what I mean? Like, there's a massive high there that I miss right now because I'm not doing it. And it's, and I think that's what I would say is very different. It's not practical, but it's mostly like a mental, emotional thing that it's just going to be different. So get ready for that.
Yeah. For me, if I'm going to break my own rules now, but I would try, if you are in a situation where you can, maybe if it's an internal move and not moving to another company, if you can try and set it up so it's like a trial period, and you're moving into that role for sort of like 6 months, and it's almost like sometimes what we talk about in innovation, like having a two-way door. So when you step through it, it's not always locked behind you and then you're stuck there. You can always go back through the door. So that's how it worked for me. I ended up going into a different area of the business and being an interim lead designer and managing a team for 6 months. And it was a great way to kind of take a lot of the pressure off, in a way, and not to feel like, you still had to do obviously a good job to keep the job, but it also kind of created a safe space of like, I'm going to try this out, and if I don't like it, I'm okay to go back to what my job was before. And equally, if the business think, he's not made for this role, they can also make that decision as well. Aside from that, I think the main thing for me would just to be authentic. And I think if you are an authentic person, you can be an authentic leader, an authentic manager. I think it just helps you be able to take people along with you for whatever it is that you lay out in front of them for your design team or that business area to achieve. So yeah, those would be my two points. Great conversation, guys. Fab episode as always. Well done for Mikey. I think that was actually technically the first F-bomb we've had in 3. I'm glad we got it in before we've done 3, just to set people's expectations. Also, thanks for all the kind things that you said to me. That was not expected, but checks are in the post. But yeah, hopefully everyone else has enjoyed listening to us, and we'll see you next time on One Pixel Out podcast. If anyone wants to say goodbye, we'll say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
Yeah.